Let's get peppy. Welcome to a very special PEP 138. I'm your host, Chaz Richard. Hello, and I'm joined by today's special guest host, Melina Wicks. Hello, Melina.
Hello.
Melina, for those who don't remember, has been involved with pretty much every entertainment production on the ABC for the last 5 years as either a writer or a producer or researcher, just name it, she's done it. And Melina also happens to be one of the world's great researchers. And so I thought that she was the perfect person to talk to about what many would regard as a very boring topic, but very, very involved and very, very thorough and very hard to get to the bottom of. And I am referring to the Hunter Biden special. So thank you so much for jumping on board with me here, Melina.
No worries.
We are in the middle of our holidays, as you can see by my grizzled castaway style 5-day growth. And I have spent most of the time at the Airbnb beach house that I've been at with my family, just looking at Hunter Biden stuff. It's been great fun. We came back here and we discovered that even the cam operators at the ABC were so bored by the concept, they deserted us. And we didn't realize this until 40 minutes after we've been waiting for them. So we do need to get a wriggle on. Melina can only be here so long. If we run out of time, and that is on the cards because there's a lot to get through, I will make sure I wrap up Melina. I'll get her conclusion, and then I will fill in the bits that we didn't get to. If we get to that, we'll see. I'm not going to be doing any what I'm grateful for, or I'm just grateful for Melina being here at the moment, 3 days before Christmas, to be honest. I'm not going to do any of the rest of that stuff or any of the normal kind of build up because we have so much to get onto. So, Melina, shall we crack on?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. And having said that, I have one more thought I should have added at the top, which is Melina is doing me a huge favor by being here, but she has not spent the last week reading non-stop stuff on Hunter Biden. She's done her work, but this is an abyss. And for that reason, I am going to drive this, right? I'm not driving it because I'm full of myself. I'm driving it because we just need to get through it fast, and I've done a lot of work. I have 55 pages of notes here, and we're just going to drive on as quickly as we can. And Melina's going to comment whenever she has something to add, but this will not be the usual kind of podcast. And if that wasn't enough faffing around, Melina just had to change rooms because I could hear feedback. So now let's crack on. Let's start with the fact that everything you're about to hear is probably not as blatant as what's happened in the past with Hunter and Joe Biden, because Hunter and Joe Biden have a history of doing some pretty dodgy stuff involving influence peddling. But for some reason, we're okay with the stuff they did in the past. We're just talking about the things that they may or may not be doing now. Joe Biden has a history of credit card companies. He's from Delaware. He's a senator from Delaware. Delaware is the home of credit card companies in America because they've got lax regulations there. And Joe formed a sweet relationship with MBNA, which is one of Delaware's biggest credit card companies. Now, they obviously donated plenty of money to Joe Biden, and Joe supported every bill looking to loosen credit laws he possibly could. But I draw your attention in particular to 1996, because that's when Hunter Biden got out of college. And straight out of college, he landed a great job at MBNA. How about that? Within 2 years, he was a senior vice president at MBNA. What a talent he had. And in fact, by 1999, Joe Biden famously was quoted as denying that he was, quote, the senator from MBNA. That's what people referred to him at times. And then in 2001, Hunter Biden decided to become a lobbyist, but he kept a consultancy job at the MBNA at the same time, as he had another job. His consultancy gig was worth $100,000 a year to consult. He was just that good. And here is where we get to the really dodgy stuff. This, in my book, is an outright bribe. Biden's house. Joe Biden sold his house in 1996 for an asking price of $1.2 million. Who did he sell it to? To the vice chairman of credit card company MBNA. Isn't that nice? But the house in today, 2023, is only worth $1.65 million, 27 years later. Now, since 1996, the Delaware housing market has nearly tripled. So according to the US Federal Housing Finance Agency, so Biden should probably have sold that house for about $600,000, a half of what he actually sold it for. In that same year, NBNA employees contributed $62,000 to Biden for his Senate re-election campaign, and the vice chairman himself donated the maximum $2,000. So in my book, that's a bribe right there. So what did Biden do for their largesse? He basically pushed every bankruptcy reform bill he possibly could. When I say reform, I mean making it harder to get bankruptcy. In 2000, he pushed one. In 2001, he pushed one. In 2005, he was the champion of a new one. Neither of those got up, by the way. But in 2005, he was the champion of the Bankruptcy Abuse Prevention and Consumer Protection Act. He pushed that from the Senate Judiciary Committee. It was supposed to stop people abusing bankruptcy. What it actually did was make it impossible to discharge student loan debt through bankruptcy. If you got a student loan, even when you declare bankruptcy, you still have to pay back the student loan debt in America. You may argue that Joe Biden is as responsible as anyone for the student debt crisis. So that, in my book, is outright corruption, blatant corruption. Do you agree, Melina?
Yes, well, particularly the house aspect, which is funny because I read a thing once saying that that Joe Biden intentionally didn't have stocks and bonds and invested all his money in property to try and avoid perception of corruption. And then that sort of seems like pretty handy cash bonus just for selling to the right person. But I suspect the reason you introduce this by saying, why doesn't anybody kick up a stink about that? I would expect that's probably because that's pretty much business as usual in US politics when there's so much money slushing around, especially the donations and doing things for companies. And I suspect in particular the reason that this whole other scandal has gotten traction along with some of the other scandals in recent times, like Trump and Russia and Hillary and the Clinton Foundation, is that people are much more comfortable in US politics going after their adversaries for anything to do with foreign money and foreign investment, and much less when it's local because they're all on the take by that standard.
That makes sense. Well, I mean, you're certainly right about business as usual in Washington. Where I haven't even mentioned the word Trump yet. We're getting there, but I should also say, but I mean, it's a fact. Regardless, it's a fact. The reason I'm starting with this is because I just want to just put a pin in what normal is in Washington before we talk about some of the piddly things we're about to talk about. And I should say as well, as soon as Hunter Biden was finished being a consultant at MBNA and lobbyist, he decided to go. He joined the board of Amtrak. He was put on the board of Amtrak as like a 20-something in 2006 until 2009. He was nominated by George W. Bush, but he was actually pushed by the other Delaware senator, Tom Carper. Obviously, he's a favor to Joe Biden. Although Carper did cite Hunter's extreme experience in this field. Let me quote him. For our purposes and for the purpose of this nomination, Hunter Biden has spent a lot of time on Amtrak trains. Like his father, like our Congressman Mike Castle and myself, Hunter Biden has lived in Delaware while using Amtrak to commute to his job, as we commute to our job in Washington almost every day of the week. So that is business as usual in Washington, okay? So that's business as usual, but let me just clear my throat about these allegations. I get the argument that a number of you are probably wondering, which is, this is a fundamentally unserious impeachment, which is designed merely to create enough smoke that they can then, at the next presidential election, say both sides are corrupt. Okay, I know that's what a lot of people are thinking. But if you are a believer in good government, and I am, and you're not merely a partisan warrior, then you should treat all allegations seriously, even if you think they came from bad faith. If there's actually substance to the allegations, then they matter regardless of the intentions of the people pushing them. Do you agree with me on that?
I do agree, but I think it is difficult. I find this problem difficult to wrestle with because if people are putting allegations out in bad faith and you engage with them, you're inherently giving them a level of credibility. And I know this is a debate that actual journalists have wrangled with a lot in general, and particularly in the Trump era. it does give them a certain weight. And a lot of people just see the headline or take away, some sense of wrongdoing without engaging in the facts, and the debunking always has less power than the initial allegation. And so that is difficult, but then also if they go unchallenged, they can be absorbed as fact as well. And so I sort of think in one sense, you kind of do people's work for them in amplifying these sort of careless allegations that are in bad faith, but also, especially at this level, you can't ignore it. And in terms of whether the investigation itself has any merit, I also struggle with that, because I think if I were to say, like, I want to ruin Chaz's career, I'm going to get Chaz, and I took your laptop and I had full access
to my laptop.
I don't know if I'd find something illegal on there, but I'm sure I could find things that would be embarrassing, as you could for me, as anyone could for anyone. If you dig enough into someone's life, you'll find something that they would, if not illegal, something at least very embarrassing that they wouldn't want out there. And so this kind of culture of muckraking, where people just sort of trying to kind of weaponize investigations for the sake of politics, I do have an issue with as well, especially in the sense of it, Comer and friends are using the power of the government and also a lot of taxpayer money and a lot of attention and time, which is also attention and time that is being paid for by American taxpayers, for sort of purely political exercise that, looks relatively baseless. We'll get to some of the specifics.
Let's not prejudge.
Yeah. I suppose, let's say, in an abstract case for things that are in bad faith, I kind of wonder whether it is, inherently a waste of government resources in a way that is, and a sort of a abuse of power that is wrong, I suppose. But then it's tricky, because if you do uncover legitimate wrongdoing is wrongdoing, and you shouldn't ignore it just because it's come from a dodgy investigation. In a criminal investigation, there are standards in terms of, you can't plant evidence, you can't, persecute people through the law. You can't just target someone for the sake of targeting someone and trying to dig something up. You kind of have to have probable cause. And I think there should be some kind of standard along those lines, where there should be pushback against the idea of government or people working in Congress just going carte blanche, using any tool they can purely for the purpose of trying to destroy people. But where there is wrongdoing, it does also need to be acknowledged.
Yeah, look, I think you made a lot of good points there. We're kind of spared the conundrum in a way, because the benefits of our job, and in particular my job on Planet America, is that I'm not breaking any news. I'm not a journalist. I'm commenting on stuff that's already out there. So I don't need to worry about amplifying, because I'm not going to talk about something unless it's already amplified. The reason why we're doing this is because I fully expect there to be an impeachment within weeks. And I want this to be recorded before the impeachment trial, so people can have a look, because I don't think there's going to be a lot of new evidence, but we'll see. But anyway, so I don't have to make the call of whether to amplify something that might be bad faith or not, because it's already there. All I can do is debunk, and so I choose to do that, which I think is an easy decision. But as you say, if I was the New York Times, then that's a different decision altogether. So I
think in the case of actual journalists and journalism, there's a feeling of when there's smoke, there's fire, but people do need to interrogate where the smoke came from, because if it's people like Rudy Giuliani running around throwing smoke bombs, it's not to say that you should necessarily ignore it, but it certainly should be reported with full context of who's making allegations and what the motivations are, and just how much support there is for those allegations, and with a healthy degree of skepticism. Yeah,
and we'll get to a few golden examples coming up from our mate Comer. Let's get on with it. Let's do an overview of the allegations against Hunter. Let's start with Hunter. We'll move to Joe Biden. Claim. The House committee says that foreign payments to the Biden family now add up to over $24 million. We've heard that phrase a lot. Foreign payments to the Biden family, the Biden crime family, I like to say. Now, the Washington Post has done the crunch on that. I've had a look through their crunch and it looks credible to me. But financial stuff is complicated, but it looks like I think they're pretty much on the money when they say only about $7.5 million of that $24 million actually has gone to the Biden family. The phrase Biden family and associates does a lot of lifting, and associates, right? We're talking about Devon Archer. We're talking about Rob Walker. We're talking about James Gilliar. We're going to meet all of those guys as we go on. We're talking about James Biden, Joe's brother. There's a lot of people. Oh, no, his family. His family doesn't count. But those other guys, they're associates. They've taken a lot of money out of that $24 million. So the Biden family is $7.5 million, and Hunter has got less than that. Okay, so let's just be very clear about that. Next thing.
Well, and also, it's worth stepping down because in Kramer's timeline, there are constant references to money being received in Biden family accounts.
Yes.
I mean, Hunter is a member of the Biden family, and there's a lot less pointing to Joe Biden accounts.
Yeah. Well, there's zero. There's zero. Biden account.
I mean, to say, even $7 million has gone to the Biden family. Okay. Yeah. Has 7 million of it gone to Hunter? Because that's a relevant detail of which Biden's in the Biden family. It's an obvious muddying of the waters. Yeah. And it's really, I mean, I'm not going to say it's irrelevant how much money Hunter has gotten, but it's obviously incredibly relevant how much, if any, has gone to Joe.
Yes. And the spoiler, zero has gone to Joe that we know of. James has taken a bit of a slice. Other than that, it's only tiny little bits, and we'll get to where those other little bits came from. But it's only tiny little bits. It's basically Hunter's about, I haven't got the exact number in front of me, but Hunter is pushing 7 million, I think. And then there's James Biden, and then there's not much of anyone else. But that's a lot less than 24 million, which is the number they keep on citing. Next thing, according to financial records obtained by the Oversight Committee, they say the Biden family set up over 20 shell companies. They also say that no one in the Biden administration or in the minority has explained what services, if any, the Bidens and their associates provided in exchange for the 24 million in foreign payments. That's another claim by the House. The truth of that is they're not actually shell companies. There are one or two shell companies there. I'm not saying they're not, but the vast majority of those 20 companies actually do something. There are lobbying companies, there's real estate companies, there's investment companies, there's a venture capital company, there's a bunch of different companies. There are real companies for real pursuits. And it makes sense that they be divided because some of them are to do with China and Chinese investors, some of them are to do with Ukraine, some of them are to do with Romania. They're for different places. And so
they all have different combinations. They all have different combinations of people involved.
Yes.
In the partnerships and joint ventures and things of that nature. Yeah.
Totally. So they're making out like it's this labyrinthine maze of like a spaghetti chart of companies. No, it's that I'm not saying it's straightforward. It's not straightforward, but it's definitely not intentionally complicated. I'll tell you that much. There is a logic to almost every company there. Okay, so there's that as well. It's worth emphasizing as well that $7.5 million for the Bidens, let's say 6 and change for Hunter, is really not much money for what we're talking about. When we're talking influence peddling and we're talking about potential corruption for someone in his position, that is not much money. Some conservatives are literally saying this is the greatest corruption scandal in political history. They're literally saying that, and this doesn't even come close. And if you think I'm being partisan when I say that, let me give you some context, which we're going to leap off. The context is the tradition of exploitation in the past from the relatives and the hangers-on of presidents. And look, I'll give you one example quite recently was Ron DeSantis. It is a classic of the genre. According to the Washington Post, after he took office in 2019, his political team made a list of the state's top 40 lobbyists, about 100 of their suggested clients to target for political contributions, and they tried to charge them to play golf with DeSantis. Some of them, they were charging $75,000 for a game of golf with DeSantis. Now, I'm not sure how many they actually succeeded in pressuring to pay that, but that wasn't the son of the governor doing that. That was the governor, the actual person in power, shaking people down for $75,000 for a game of golf. That's for just a state, just for one state. That's the context in which we're talking about, right? And also, just to throw out there the whole influence peddling thing, just how ordinary it is. Let me play you Tucker Carlson talking. Now, he was setting Devon Archer up for the shiv here, but still, this is Tucker Carlson's view about this kind of stuff.
We urgently need your advice on how you can use your influence.
Right.
So, and that's all kind of, again, just for context, it's pretty conventional.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what lobbying firms are for.
Yes.
Standard influence peddling, according to Tucker Carlson, is pretty conventional. He's talking about Burisma there. Now he's about to say it got worse with Burisma. But I'm not setting him up on Burisma here. I'm just saying, just generally, he's saying influence peddling like this is generally done. It's conventional. I'm not saying it's good, but it happens. The DeSantis example, he's not getting into trouble. People just accept it. All right, that's the standard, unfortunately. Now let's mention the word I haven't mentioned until now, Trump, because this is the point of comparison. I think that's worth making. February 19, 2018, there's a Washington Post article about Indian newspapers running a full-page glossy advertisement soliciting Trump Tower home buyers in India to pay an extra booking fee of $38,000 to join Donald Trump Jr. for a conversation and a dinner. So right off the bat there, not only are they trying to get the cash for the house, but also the cash, an extra cash to meet Don Jr. Don Jr. is the incentive. What are people getting for that? It's just rubbing shoulders with people in power, access to people in power. That's what you're getting, right? October 2018, China's trademark office granted provisional approval for 34 trademarks to Ivanka Trump's company for Ivanka branded fashion gear, sunglasses, handbags, shoes, jewelry, as well as beauty services and voting machines. That's worth millions of dollars. How about Mar-a-Lago? How much money did Trump raise by bumping up his Mar-a-Lago prices at a time when he was an in-demand political figure and people knew they could rub shoulders with him there? Do you remember Anthony Pratt? Rolling Stone reported that he paid $1 million for tickets to Mar-a-Lago's New Year's Eve gala. $1 million for one night, far above the actual price of $50,000, which in itself is shocking. $50,000 for a New Year's party with Trump. That is, Hunter Biden dreams of that kind of payment for one night, right? And $1 million. By the way, Pratt also paid Rudy Giuliani almost $1 million to attend his 60th birthday party. What was he getting from Rudy Giuliani? Right? So that's where $7.5 million for 6 years of graft from Hunter Biden seems pretty small fry, right? I haven't even mentioned Kushner. All amateurs compared to Jared Kushner. According to the Wall Street Journal, 99% of $3 billion in investments raised by Jared Kushner's private equity firm, Affinity Partners, came from foreign sources. The Saudis invested $2 billion of that, while the UAE and Qatar added another $200 million. Need I remind you that Kushner was Trump's Middle Eastern guy, okay? And this was weeks after the administration ended, and everyone knew Trump was going to run again. This is back in 2017. Saudi Arabia also agreed to pay Kushner tens of millions of dollars in management fees every year, even if he didn't do a thing with their money. Saudi officials, they viewed this arrangement as inappropriate for someone of Kushner's experience, which is zero as far as asset management goes. But Khalid Sheikh Mohammed overruled those concerns. I wonder why. Even James Comer said, quote, "I think that what Kushner did crossed the line of ethics." But that's not all. In August 2018, Kushner companies were about to default on their mortgage of a massive skyscraper, 666 Fifth Avenue. Kushner's companies had approached Qatar multiple times about investing in 666 Fifth Avenue, even while Kushner was working with them as part of the Trump administration. Qatar initially declined. They weren't shameless enough. Then Saudi Arabia and the UAE launched a blockade of Qatar, and the Trump administration supported the blockade. Then a company called Brookfield decided to lease the entire property from the Kushner companies for a reported advance payment of $1.1 billion, covering 99 years' rent. Qatar's sovereign wealth fund was the second largest investor in Brookfield Property Partners. And then the Trump administration changed their mind on the blockade. Now, I'm not saying that the Trump administration was blackmailing them for Kushner. I'm not saying it was like a full-on quid pro quo here. I'm just saying that I think the two were connected. The Qatar wanting to impress the Trump administration was for foreign policy reasons. It's connected to them investing in Jared Kushner's property. That's what I am saying. And I'm saying that that's the kind of shady corruption that is out there for billions of dollars. That's $4 billion when you add up both deals just for Jared Kushner, okay? $7.5 million is looking pretty humble by comparison to that. I've even mentioned, how about Trump himself? Trump, according to Forbes, left office $2.4 billion richer than he went in. If not for the pandemic, it would have been even better off. He had his thumb in the pie of Saudi Arabia as well. He's hosting LIV golf tournaments. He's striking $4 billion real estate deals in Oman with Saudi real estate agents. The Trump Hotel was booked out constantly in 2017 and 18 by Malaysia and Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the UAE and Turkey and China, spending millions of dollars at crucial times in their foreign policy. And yet, with all of those billions and billions of dollars of graft, Eric Trump still says something like this and doesn't get laughed off the internet.
Well, the only family in probably United States history that didn't enrich themselves when they went into government is the Trump family.
Jesus, Eric. Come on, mate. Okay, so that is the context in which this was, in which I want to draw a comparison. Do you have anything to add to this before we get into Hunter's specifics?
Yeah, I just wanted to add with the Jared Kushner $2 billion from the Saudis that he was, according to some, in the Middle East on January 6th. So even though the deal was done a few weeks after Trump was out of office, there's every chance that he was actually lining that deal up before Trump had left office. But as you say, even if we give them the full benefit of the doubt that he wasn't doing deals like that while Trump was president, Trump only serving one term meant it was obvious that he was a strong chance to come back. And so that even if we're going to say, oh, it doesn't matter when they weren't in office, by the Republican standard by which they're judging Biden, we should certainly care about it if we're looking at Trump being elected again. And I don't see any of them hand-wringing about whether Trump is going to have a conflict of interest if he's re-elected president next year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I should say, like, back in 2017, like, Trump was very clear. I mean, he hadn't declared until 2019, but it was so obvious he was going to run again. I mean, I was there. I haven't forgotten. I remember. Yeah, whereas with Joe Biden, I don't think people were sure that he was going to run until like 2018, I reckon. But anyway, so that's the context. Those numbers are the context. So given that, let's now have a quick overview, country by country, of what Hunter got up to, and then we'll go into more detail on some spot moments. Russia, February 14, 2014, Yelena Baturina, who was at the time married to former Moscow Mayor Yuri Luzhov. She's a magnate of her own. She wired $3.5 million to Rosemont Seneca Thornton, which was a hunter/Devon Archer company. In spring of 2014, so that's, when that was exactly, we're not quite sure, but obviously somewhere between February and April, or February and May, March and May, she attended a dinner at Cafe Milano with a with two Kazakhstani friends of / colleagues / bribers of Hunter Biden and Devon Archer, Rakashev and Masimov, with Joe Biden, with Hunter, and with Devon Archer. On March the 11th, 2014, a total of $2,752,000 was transferred from Rosemont Seneca Thornton to Rosemont Seneca Bohai, which is another Archer Hunter company, but $750,000 was transferred directly to Devon Archer. There is no evidence that money in Rosemont Seneca Thornton or Rosemont Seneca Bohai went to Hunter Biden ever. This was Devon Archer's deal. This is what Devon Archer had to say in his testimony to the House. So with Yelena Baturina, it was from Interco, which is a Russian plastics company that she owns. And Interco invested, we're really not sure why that 3.5 went to RST, that's Rosemont Seneca Thornton. Interco invested close to $120 million with us in Rosemont Realty. So, on that particular wire, there was some commission element. There were 2 warehouses in Brooklyn. I don't know what the specifics of the wire were, but it was quite frankly, it was not supposed to go there, but that's where it went. But the 3.5 was a Rosemont Realty component of a $118 million, $120 million investment, he said. So this was Devon Archer's deal. It was his real estate deal. It was his money. He's the one who dealt with it. He seems unconcerned about $3.5 million being placed in the wrong company. That's probably, though, because he controlled all those companies. It didn't matter to him which company it was going in because it was all, they were all his playthings. Those companies were his playthings, not Hunter Biden's playthings, even though Hunter Biden had a piece of them. Then April 6, 2014, Hunter meets with Devon Archer and Zlakevsky, who's the head of Burisma, at Lake Como. That's where they're agreed that Devon Archer and Hunter will join the board. Apparently, Baturina, the Russian woman, was there as well. I'm not sure how that works out, but apparently, according to Archer, she was there at the hotel. It's not clear why. Maybe it's just a great hotel. 16th of April, 2015, Baturina may have been at a second dinner at the Cafe Milano. Archer doesn't remember her there. Emails from 2015 suggest that she was an invitee, and another attendee of the dinner told Washington Post that he saw her there. But Devon Archer does not remember her there. Okay, so that is a basic timeline of what happened with Russia. The claim made by the 2022, the claim made by the House Committee is that following Russia's invasion into Ukraine in 2022, the Biden administration placed several Russian oligarchs on the public sanctions list, but they didn't put Yelena Baturina on that list, even though she is an oligarch. Okay, so that's the claim. Now, the truth is, if that was corrupt, like a corrupt payoff to keep off the sanctions list, then she showed a lot of foresight because she made that payment on the 14th of February 2014. The Russia-Ukraine war started on the 20th of February 2014. So she paid her money before the Russia-Ukraine war that eventually, down the track, 8 years later, spawned sanctions. Okay, so there's no reason for her to expect sanctions when she made her payment, unless she has a time machine. All right? So who pays $3.5 million for no reason on the off chance that one day there might be a war which creates sanctions that they might be excluded from if they don't pay that money? That's a lot of money to pay for that, right? And Devon Archer, and to remind you, Devon Archer says it was his deal. It was all because it's his $120 million deal. On the other hand, there is something that smells about this. Number one, she turned up to a Cafe Milano dinner, which was a Hunter Biden thing. Why? If she's Devon Archer's person, why is she at the Cafe Milano dinner? Maybe Archer invited her. I mean, Archer and Hunter worked together. Maybe. But why is she at the second one as well? Long after her investment, a year after her investment of real estate, why is she at the second one? So that is that troubles me slightly. And what's she doing there? Archer's real estate deal, I had to look into it. Pretty opaque. I mean, there's some information online. It's hard to get to the bottom of it. I certainly haven't seen $120 million worth of investment. I've seen a lot of millions of dollars worth of investment. It's a bit opaque. I'm not 100% sure on it. I don't want to put it down as a confirmation. So I just want to say that's what Archer says, okay? And also Archer and Hunter like to mix and match their business partners. You'll see this a lot. So maybe there's something else out there with Ballerina and Hunter that we don't know yet, possibly, but we haven't got it yet. So to me, this is a loose end. No case so far, but potentially dodgy for Hunter somewhere down the way. How do you rate this in terms of either potentially dodgy or definitely dodgy or not at all dodgy?
Potentially, in the sense that there's just not enough information. I mean, there's nothing in there that is overtly damning, but there are questions, as you've raised, that don't necessarily have answers, and so you never know.
Yeah, sure. Okay. And we're going to go through, by the way, as we go through with all the claims and stuff, I'm going to ask you your verdict every time. Judge Melina will weigh in, then we'll see where we're at the end. You can take note of any of the ones that you particularly want to bring up at the end as making you lean one way or another. Okay, let's go to Kazakhstan, if you have nothing else to say about Russia. February 5, 2014, Kenneth Rakashev, a Kazakhstani businessman, met Hunter Biden at a Washington, D.C. hotel. Rakashev worked closely with someone who was about to be the Prime Minister of Kazakhstan, Karim Massimov. He became the PM in April 2014. And he was a director at Kazakhstan's, not Massimov, Rakashev was a director at Kazakhstan's state-owned oil company, Kazmunaygas. He's also involved in a munitions company. They sold vehicles to Russia during the Ukraine war. Devon Archer regards Massimov, the guy who became PM, as a close personal friend. He was even making jokes at his expense during his testimony. He clearly thinks he's a great mate. In email correspondence with Devon Archer on February 5th, 2014, Rakashev requested Secretary of State John Kerry visit Kazakhstan. Archer replied, "If we have some business started as planned, I will ensure it's planned soonest." Note, Archer was a Kerry advisor in his 2004 presidential campaign. So he has a connection to John Kerry. In spring of 2014...
Were they working with Kerry's stepson at that time? Because they were at one point.
They were. And they were at that point. Yes, you're right. Absolutely, they were. That's true. That was before. That's a good pickup. That was before Kerry's stepson quit working with him. I'm not sure that call was to Devon Archer himself, or whether the email was to Devon Archer himself or to the company, though. So Kerry's stepson might have had nothing to do with it. I don't want to cast aspersions, but good pickup.
No, but just that Devon Archer would have cause to feel that he had a current connection to Kerry that he could kind of flash around.
That's true. That's absolutely
Mine seems pretty above board for the most part from what I've seen.
Yeah. And then in spring of 2014, Biden, there was the Cafe Milano dinner I referred to before, the first Cafe Milano dinner with Rakashev, Massimov, Ballerina, Hunter, and Archer. I can't confirm what came first out of that meeting, because it's spring, right? So whether that dinner came first or the April 23rd, 2014 transaction I'm about to say, I don't know which came first. I think the dinner came first, but it's impossible to know. I've looked really hard. It's impossible to know. In April 23rd, 2014, Rakashev's Singaporean company wired through his Latvian company $142,300 to Rosemont Seneca Bohai. The next day, $142,300 was wired from Rosemont Seneca Bohai to a New Jersey car dealership for a sports car for Hunter Biden. Okay, so the Kazakhstani guy bought a sports car for Joe Biden. And no one is pretending otherwise. He bought him a sports car, okay? Archer says in his testimony he has no idea why Rakashev did that. Quote, "That's a business matter between them," Archer said. And in June 2014, Archer and Biden arranged for Burisma executives to visit Kazakhstan to evaluate a three-way deal between Burisma, a Chinese state-owned company, and the government of Kazakhstan, who obviously Rakashev is mixed up with. So, did Hunter get the sports car for dinner with Joe Biden? Did Hunter get the sports car for spotting up business with Burisma? Or was it just general relationship building for influence? We don't know. We have no idea why he got that sports car. I imagine that's one of the first questions he'll be asked when he finally testifies. But for that reason, since we have no idea what's going on there and he got a dodgy sports car, I would call that potentially dodgy for Hunter in my rating system. And it's 0 for Joe Biden. I don't think him turning up to a dinner for 5 seconds is we'll get to that dinner anyway. But so far I'm saying nothing for Joe Biden, and I'm saying potentially dodgy for Hunter in this area as well. What's your view on the Kazakhstan stuff?
Yeah, well, gifts, especially very expensive gifts like sports cars, always have a dodgier vibe because, when you look at the house timeline, there are so many things that are just vague, like a payment was made by this country or this business to this Hunter business. And it's like, okay, well, a payment, like, he was working. I'm not saying that he was definitely doing good work. I wouldn't assume he was, but he was employed by people doing business. So, a payment can happen in the course of legitimate business, but it's unusual to be gifted a $140,000 sports car. And, obviously raises the question, what was it for? And yeah, I mean, I haven't heard a good explanation for it.
Yeah. So what are you calling that? You calling that potentially dodgy or?
It's potentially dodgy.
Okay. All right. Okay. Just want to be very clear. Okay. Let's go to Romania. We're really traveling around the world here. In 2005, a businessman lodged a criminal complaint against tycoon Gabriel Popoviciu over a land deal in Romania. Now, Romania prosecutors initially declined to investigate, citing a lack of evidence. But in July 2008, the country's National Anti-Corruption Protection Service took over the case. In March 2009, Popoviciu was charged with, quote, complicity in abuse of position. In May 2009, Popoviciu was hit with a bribery charge. Early 2015, so 6 years that case is going, Hunter starts working for him. It's unclear exactly when Hunter started working. There's talk of spring. Again, they like the word spring in Hunter Biden world. It's unclear how much legal assistance Hunter personally provided, although it was his entire company that was helping out. A number of them were working on the case. But that's what he was supposedly being paid for. September 28, 2015, the House committee says, Vice President Biden welcomed Romanian President Klaus Iohannis to the White House. Within 5 weeks of this meeting, and then we go to the next payment, which is November 5th, 2005, Gabriel Popoviciu starts paying Rob Walker's company. Rob Walker is an associate of Hunter Biden. And the first wire is around $180,000. And the wires keep on coming from then. From November 2015 to May 2017, Popoviciu's company paid Robinson Walker, that's the company, over $3 million. Biden family accounts received $1.038 million from Robinson Walker after those deposits. So about a third, basically. It was basically, Walker has openly said in his testimony it was all Hunter's money. But Rob Walker sent the money to whoever Hunter wanted them to send it to. Hunter gave gifts to, say, Haley Biden, who was Beau Biden's ex-wife, who Hunter was dating for a while there, which is, we're not getting there. That's not impeachment worthy. But he threw 10 grand her way. So that's why she's got some of the Biden family money. But essentially, while some of the money was splashed around different places, depending on what Hunter Biden went, they weren't hiding it. They weren't pretending it was anyone but Hunter Biden's money. Hunter Biden got $1 million out of the $3 million. Okay. Now that the House committee has connected Biden meeting the president of Romania to that first payment, but it's obviously ridiculous because Hunter was already working for Popoviciu before he got payments and before the meeting, and the president has nothing to do with some oligarch anyway. I did look that up if there was some connection between them, but there doesn't appear to be. And in fact, the oligarch was pressured later on by someone else to try to pardon the oligarch, and he refused to. So they can't be that great mates.
That's one of the things I was sort of referring to when you look at the House's timeline, the timeline of influence peddling, as they call it, where there are just all of these very vague assertions along those lines where it's like Hunter's or the Biden family got some money from Romania, and then Biden met with the leader of Romania. It's like, yeah, Hunter Biden was working for a Romanian person, and Joe Biden, vice president, met with a lot of world leaders, I would imagine, in his time as vice president. And they don't put anything forward as to how they're actually connected. They're just like, here's A and here's Z. Yeah. You can figure out what letters go in between. It's not very convincing to me when they do things like that. And a lot of what they're putting forward is just this very vague sense that things are connected without actually demonstrating how they're connected.
Yeah, there's a lot of where there's smoke, there's fire from their strategy. But as you can see, I really, really tried to make connections where I possibly could and try and suss them out. I've done so much work. I really have. So I'm doing my best here. Sometimes there's just
the connection, the connection is important. The connection is the crime, if there is one, or is the corruption. If these things are not connected explicitly in some way, then there's nothing there. And that's what I think is sort of incumbent on Republicans to demonstrate in their investigations, which there isn't a lot of so far.
I agree. I should also say that Popovich didn't just get Hunter Biden on his team. He assembled a high-profile legal team, including a former FBI director, Louis Freeh. And despite Hunter's best efforts, he was convicted in 2016. He then launched an appeal. There's no sense of, by the way, I should say as well, there's no sense of anything else that either Hunter or Joe Biden did for that money that was paid. Okay, nothing else, no sense of anything else whatsoever. No dinners, nothing like that. Yet 16, but we should say 16 is a house. This is what the House says in their way that you say, as you say, the smoke fire thing. 16 of the 17 payments for Popovich's company to Robinson Walker was made while Joe Biden was vice president. How about that? But that makes sense because that's when he was on trial. like in August 2017, the appeal failed and he went to jail. And that's when they stopped paying Hunter because there was no more legal case. Okay, so that makes sense. But you know what happened then? He then hired Rudy Giuliani to represent him. And of course, at this point in time, it was the Trump administration. And so it's pretty obvious to me that part of the reason he was hiring Hunter was because he's Joe Biden's son. Obviously, Hunter Biden is not a crack lawyer. He doesn't have a TV show for his legal exploits.
I mean, he's a kind of crack lawyer, but not that kind.
He's a different kind of crack lawyer. But yeah, and I think another reason he would have been hiring Hunter is because Joe Biden had a conspicuous anti-corruption push in Romania only a few years earlier. So he would have been hoping to leverage a halo effect by having a Biden involved in his team. And basic influence peddling, just like all the rest of them. It didn't work. He still went to jail. I can't say that Joe Biden did anything, that's for sure. But to be fair here, Hunter and his partners did real legal work and real lobbying. They really did. Like I looked in all the stuff they did. They were trying to organize not just a legal defense, but they were trying to lobby for changes to corruption laws in Romania. They actually almost successfully pulled it off, but in the end, it didn't help them anyway. And they were trying to get other lawyers to join the team and all the rest of it. $3 million, in my view, is not an unreasonable price to pay for a high-priced legal team, even in Romania. What's your verdict on this? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. To me, like you sort of brushed over the affair with Beau's wife, but that kind of stuff is relevant in the sense that with Hunter, like, it is so easy to make everything sound sorted because he has done so many kind of unseemly things in his life, like with the drug addiction, with the affairs, with the prostitutes and the strip clubs and the fathering a child and not acknowledging her. Like, he's not a great guy. He's obviously very troubled. And, he's done a lot of things that, and some of which there's photographic evidence of that, is kind of seedy. And so it's just very easy to kind of put that like muck on everything he does. But there are points in his life where he presumably worked for his money, and it seems like this was one of them.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like that to me. I mean, it's not like I went through his briefs, but that's got another double meaning which I really am not comfortable with. He did seem to me to be doing things like he went over there at times for periods of time, and like it didn't seem to be like he was phoning it in to me.
And this one really seems to be very far off any connection to Biden, like even like a kind of a insinuation. It's like, I just don't understand what the supposed corruption is in this one in terms of Biden, like Joe Biden.
They have made no effort to suggest one. None. If they did, I would tell it to you. But, okay, so now we're 3 countries down: Russia, Kazakhstan, and Romania. Let's put them all to bed because there's nothing else to say about any of them. We're going to focus now on the 2 main countries where there's a lot to say about. First is Ukraine. Overview on Ukraine. April 6, 2014, Hunter meets with Devon Archer and the Burisma owner, Zlakevsky, at Lake Como. That's when it's agreed that Hunter will join the board. For whatever reason, Baturina was there as well. I'm not sure she was part of the meeting, but she was at the hotel. Archer seems to remember her at the very least. Devon Archer officially joined the board on April 15, 2014, and Hunter officially joined the board on May the 12th, 2014, a month later. Burisma paid Hunter and Devon $1 million a year each. The payments for both Devon Archer and Hunter Biden were wired through Rosemont Seneca Bohai, one of their companies. A number of payments went to Rosemont Seneca Bohai when Archer was theoretically controlling the company. Like I said before, it was Archer's company, really, even though Hunter had an equal stake in it. It was Archer's plaything. Archer, once again, during his testimony, could not explain why Hunter Biden received his money through Archer's company when Hunter Biden had his own business accounts, such as Owasco, which we will be meeting soon. As a rule of thumb, Devon Archer seemed to be notably surprised by where money was going constantly in his testimony. I don't know if that means he's hopeless, or it means he's corrupt and lying, or it means, I don't know. He's putting on a fake sheen of coolness. I don't know. But they were constantly going, so why was that money in that account? He's going, oh, shouldn't have been there. That's weird. He did that about 5 or 6 times in his testimony. It was weird. Anyway, that's one more example. May 21st, 2014, an email from Pajasky to Hunter and Devon Archer. Pajasky is the number 4 person at Burisma. He is basically their operations guy, essentially, like the guy on the ground. And like the guy who actually got stuff done on the ground level. And he states to them their Burisma's aim quite clearly. I'll read it to you. As previously pointed out on a number of occasions, the representatives of new authorities in power tend to quite aggressively approach Zelensky unofficially with the aim to obtain cash from him. Not Zelensky, sorry, Zlakevsky. He's got his initials there, but I just said his name, Zlakevsky. Unofficially, with the aim to obtain cash from him. Initially, it was done by the representatives of Svoboda Party and the Ministry of Internal Affairs. These so-called unofficial communications would entail blackmailing. In case we don't cooperate, i.e. provide money in cash, the gas production business of Zlakevsky would be stopped, destroyed, etc. It's important to note that Svoboda Party is represented in the government by the General Prosecutor and by Minister of Ecology and Natural Resources of Ukraine. He said then that they were, quote, principal regulators in the area of issuing licenses for natural resources and control. After unsuccessful attempts to receive funds from our side, they proceed with concrete actions. We urgently need your advice on how you could use your influence to convey a message/signal, etc., to stop what we consider to be politically motivated actions. So they're very explicitly saying what they want there. I'll read it again. We urgently need your advice on how you could use your influence to convey a message/signal, etc., to stop what we consider to be politically motivated actions. Okay, so that's that email then. That's in May 2014. Then in November 2015, November 6, 2015, Amos Hochstein, the Special Envoy and Coordinator for International Energy Affairs in the Obama administration, meets with Hunter Biden and discusses Burisma. So he's an Obama administration official. He meets with Hunter Biden, discusses Burisma. 5 days later, Hochstein meets with Vice President Biden in the West Wing. The day after that, he calls Hunter again. The reason I'm pointing this out to you is because that is potential lobbying. And we'll be coming back to that a little later. November to December 2014, Hunter starts shepherding through a hiring of Blue Star strategies. Not 14, that should be 15. November to December 2015. Hunter helps shepherd through the hiring of Blue Star Strategies as a lobbyist for Burisma. Hunter found them, or Hunter's company found them. Blue Star Strategies end up doing most of the ugly work in America. Hunter isn't doing it. It's Blue Star Strategies. They're old school lobbyists. Then on November 13, the US Embassy announces Biden is going to visit Ukraine. November 16 is when Pajarski says he's ready to proceed with the contract execution with Blue Star Strategies. So the announcement of Biden going to visit Ukraine was before Blue Star Strategies were hired. The reason I tell you that is because a lot of conservatives are saying that Blue Star Strategies worked on Biden to get him to come to Ukraine. That's obviously not the case unless they have a time machine. Note also, in the email exchange with Pajarski about hiring Blue Star Strategies, Eric Schwerin, and he is the bookkeeper for Hunter Biden and for Joe Biden, says, quote, Sally said she's already had a few meetings on Burisma's behalf and had some feedback she wanted to give to us offline. She felt she had some intelligence on why the ambassador made his comments. We're going to get to the ambassador a little bit further on. The ambassador had made comments about sacking or about putting pressure on Shokin months earlier. The reason I put that in the timeline is so you can see that Burisma were aware of the ambassador's comments before they hired Blue Star Strategies. They're aware of it. They're aware that the ambassador was putting the pressure on Shokin without them doing anything. Okay, but they hired Blue Star Strategies anyway. December 7th and 8th of 2015, Biden visits Ukraine for the 5th time. Only 2 of the trips out of the 5 were taken after Hunter joined the board of Burisma. February the 4th, 2016, Zakevsky gave Hunter Biden birthday gifts that Hunter Biden wrote in an email were, quote, far too extravagant. By his standards, that would be pretty extravagant. So I don't know what they were. We don't know what they were. We've just seen the email. We haven't. No one knows what these gifts were. But that's what the email says. In February, February, Shokin, who is the prosecutor general, resigns. We'll talk a lot more about him, so I'll just leave that for now. April 2019, Devon Archer leaves Burisma earlier. In April 2019, Hunter Biden leaves Burisma. Devon Archer left him a little bit earlier because Devon Archer got into legal trouble, so he left Burisma before then. But Hunter Biden stayed till April 2019. So I know we're going to talk about heaps about Shokin and all that kind of stuff, but just on a broad level, Hunter Biden being on the board at all. What's your view about that? What's your verdict on that?
Well, I know that the people within the Obama administration were uncomfortable about it from the get-go. And it's obviously proven very problematic, but I feel like it's worth just getting into the specifics of it. I mean, it's not ideal when Joe Biden was explicitly involved in Ukraine policy. But yeah, I think it's better to get into the specifics of the allegations around it.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna weigh in before we get the specifics. And then I'll weigh in again when we get the specifics. I'm just gonna
One
say
thing I would say actually broadly was that it seems like, having read about, because there's been a tension with Hunter and his attempts to earn income over his whole career, right? Like, as you were saying, as soon as he got out of college, he was in jobs where he was, arguably pretty easy to argue, profiting off being a Biden, and he did a lot of lobbying work, and then all of this stuff with various overseas entities. And it seemed like, from reading about like various things and how various ones came into being, there were times in his life where he did put up appropriate guardrails around work that he was doing, and other times where he kind of seemed to let those guardrails slip away. And by his own telling, he was sober from 2003 to 2010. So he was in his 30s then, and fell off the wagon between 2010 and 2019 at various, not the whole time, but kind of, getting clean for a little bit and relapsing, clean for a little bit, relapsing. And it's easy to see, given he was in various stages of addiction, how that would have played a role in, I'm not saying this is an excuse, I'm just saying in terms of understanding how he operated, I can imagine situations where at times he was more sensitive to trying to do things the right way, and other times where he was not caring, probably, and letting, arguably crossing lines that were predictable lines he shouldn't have crossed.
Yeah, fair enough. We will be revisiting his addiction, I'm sure, but that's a fair point to make. I wanted to add a couple of things just about Burisma in general before we get to the detail, which is that it is not strange for Burisma to try to buy Hunter Biden on their board. They collected a lot of people. In 2014, they hired Devon Archer, who, as recall, had a connection to John Kerry, the Secretary of State at the time. In 2014, they hired a lobbyist, David Leiter, who was John Kerry's ex-chief of staff when Kerry was a senator. Once again, interesting connection there to the current Secretary of State at the time. After Trump became president in 2017, lo and behold, they hired a Republican. They hired Joseph Kofor Black, who was the head of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center under President George W. Bush. They also became a heavy sponsor of the Atlantic Council, whose experts are often cited on energy and security policy in the former Soviet Union. So Hunter's presence was not strange or unusual. It's also not like he brought nothing. There's been a lot of smart-arsery from Trump and his pals about Hunter Biden having nothing to offer whatsoever. I'm not saying that Hunter Biden knew anything about oil or gas. Definitely not. But Hunter Biden, I'll let Devon Archer tell you what Hunter Biden offered, because Tucker Carlson asked him.
What were the specific skills that he brought to clients?
Well, at the end of the day, he had a career in Washington,
Yeah.
Graduated Yale Law School, and had a very big network in D.C., and brought that know-how and understanding of D.C. and ultimately the Biden brand. You got to be an expert in knowing the guy, and he was the guy that was the expert in knowing the guy.
Burisma also had hired, was it the former president or prime minister of Poland?
Yes.
High-ranking Polish opinion. And so there's obviously, and I've looked into the whole history of their board, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were other key European people as well. It's obviously, standard operating procedure to hire people who have influence or connections to influence. And one other kind of headline thought in this area I wanted to add was, the idea of Hunter profiting off his last name. I mean, this is one thing where I will call bullshit on Joe Biden, because he's denied family members have profited off his name. And I mean, that's demonstrably untrue. And it's kind of absurd, because aside from the fact that Hunter Biden was clearly extremely aware of the value of his last name, because he explicitly said it. I mean, there are messages leaked where he said in one, his last name is his family's only asset. But it's also just obviously demonstrably true of all people with powerful parents. Like, the term Nepo baby didn't catch fire for no reason. It's evident just in all areas of life. If you have parents that are powerful or rich, in any area, politics particularly, but, any kind of area of industry or whatever, it's obviously helpful. Like, it's, Obama, who was as clean as they get as a politician, his daughter did an internship at Harvey Weinstein's company before the New York Times took him down. And she now works in the TV and film industry. And I don't want to take anything away from her. I'm sure she's a very smart and capable person given her parents, but of course her last name opens doors for her as well. I mean, she has the integrity. She's actually writing in Hollywood under a different name. So she's obviously trying to, not profiteer off it the way Hunter does. And there are lines, like some people obviously try to act with integrity, and try to prove themselves or make their own way in the world and things of that nature. And Hunter obviously has deliberately tried to maximize and leverage his own last name to its fullest advantage. So there are obviously degrees and people who act, more morally than others, but it's just obviously true that people who are famous or connected to famous people or powerful or connected to powerful people have advantages conveyed to them, whether they want them or not. Like, it's just obvious.
Yeah, no, that is true. And on that note, the final point I wanted to make before I moved on to China is that this is not like, is that while you might think while you might think that I'm arguing this is just business as usual, no problems, I'm actually not, because I think Hunter Biden's different to all those people I just mentioned, and that is he's the son of the president, and his appointment interferes with foreign policy. And we will go into, actually, I'll read you a quote right now from George Kent, who is the guy that you referred to before obliquely as not being a big fan of Hunter Biden being on the board. He's the number 2 official for the State Department in Ukraine when during Trump's impeachment. And he was very open about his views about Hunter being on the board, and he hated it. He said, this was in a classified cable, this wasn't in his testimony, although in his testimony he also bucketed it. He said, Hunter's presence on the Burisma board undercut the anti-corruption message the VP and we were advancing in Ukraine, because Ukrainians heard one message from us and saw another set of behaviour with the family association with a known corrupt figure. Talking about Zlotevsky there. So he wasn't a fan of it at all. And that's why Hunter is different, because he's interfering with foreign policy. Kofa Black is not interfering with foreign policy. No one cares about Kofa Black, whereas they do care about Joe Biden's son, as evidenced by what's happened over the last few years. And it's worth remembering the guy you brought before, Chris Hines Kerry. Remember I said how he was working with them, but then he dropped out this year? The reason he dropped out of working with Hunter and Devon Archer was because they joined the Burisma board. At that point, Chris Hines Kerry said, I'm out. And I mean, they're still mates, they're still friends, but he just, I just can't work with you anymore. And he didn't say why, but it's so obvious why. His dad was a Secretary of State. And so he knew that it was wildly inappropriate. It was even more wildly inappropriate for Hunter, but Hunter did it anyway. So I think him even being on the board, before we get to anything that he did, him even being on the board is incredibly dodgy. Not illegal, but incredibly dodgy. It's got nothing to do with Joe Biden though. So I'm calling it dodgy. I'm calling it definitely dodgy for Hunter, not for Joe Biden. That's where I'm at the moment so far. Okay. Anything else to say before we go to China?
Well, one thing that I think is, I suppose, a bit dodgy with Joe, and probably where I'd criticize him the strongest, is by all accounts, he had this don't ask, don't tell policy with Hunter in regards to all of his business dealings over, all of the years. Basically like, and that was obviously an attempt to try and keep his hands clean, to be like, you do what you're doing, don't tell me about it, I don't want to know about it, and therefore I'm not corrupted and I'm not interfering in your life as an adult, which, is believable to me. And I understand his logic of why he thought that was a way to handle it, but I don't think it's good enough. I think Joe Biden has like a general tendency to be so sure of his own righteousness in things that he can often slip into the gray zone because of that, and kind of doesn't handle criticism well. You see it in his press conferences and dealings with journalists on all kinds of issues where people will ask him often fair questions and he'll just be like, come on, it's that, like, you're going to ask me that attitude. And I don't think that is good enough as a public official in general, let alone a president. You should answer questions and you should be accountable. And I think, this idea of I read this one article by someone who had read the biographies of 4 members of the Biden family. I don't know why, but they said their takeaway from it was this consistency across the board of there being a kind of pride in the Biden family about things being left unsaid, that they would kind of talk about, Hunter would talk about how he had almost this telepathic connection with Joe, and they have this Biden family rule, which is if you have to ask for help, it's too late. And the idea of that obviously being there should always be someone who's there for you before you even need to ask. But the critique being, is it so bad to just have a conversation? Like, why don't you guys actually talk about, what you're doing and what you're feeling? And so I do find it plausible, Biden saying, I didn't know anything about what Hunter was doing. Certainly specifics. I think it's probably a fib to suggest he knew nothing, given he's meeting with people and things like that. But I think he did try to stay out of it. But I think in indulging Hunter in that way and turning a blind eye to the stuff he was doing, he was not setting clear red lines that weren't to be crossed. And he certainly wasn't enforcing any red lines that weren't to be crossed. And I think that's created problems for him. And I think it also created a culture around him and his staff and staff in the Obama administration more broadly, where people didn't feel like they could raise concerns about this stuff with him, or when they tried to, they got shouted down by him or criticized. Like, I had a quote here from an article saying, when I asked members of Biden's staff whether they had discussed their concerns with the vice president, several of them said that they had been too intimidated to do so. Quote, everyone who works for him has been screamed at, a former advisor told me. And then they went on to say, others say they were wary of hurting his feelings. One business associate told me that Biden, during difficult conversations about his family, got deeply melancholy, which to me is more painful than if someone yelled and screamed at me. It's like you've hurt him terribly. That was always my fear, that I would be really touching a very fragile part of him. Again, that's very understandable from a human perspective. You can understand where that comes from. But I do think he has a responsibility as a president, vice president, senator over those years to have those difficult conversations and to have his staff feel like they can raise those concerns that there's a conflict of interest or a potential conflict of interest, because not having those conversations has opened up all of this that's happening right now. So I do put some blame on him for kind of leaving things vague and loose, because it has in a way allowed this to happen. And, maybe it's partly Heinz's own good sense, and maybe it was partly John Kerry being more firm with him. But, other people clearly have better understandings of where those lines are. And I do think with Joe Biden, I get the feeling that he sees protecting Hunter from everything difficult in the world as literally a matter of life or death, which is probably not without reason. And I think that explains a lot about the ways he's turned a blind eye to the stuff that he's done and indulged him, rather than setting clear boundaries and enforcing them. Obviously, because he has had so many troubles over so many years, I can see Joe Biden legitimately being very afraid that he's going to die from his addiction, or would have in that period. And that, he's treated him with kid gloves because of that. But again, if you just want to look after your family and worry about them and helping them, you don't have to be president.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people aren't president. There are other things he could have done with his life. And, and I don't think that you should, if you want to be president, especially if you want to, do good in the world with public office and public service, it shouldn't totally come at the expense of your family either. You should be able to have a family and look after them and be in public office. But, at a certain, there are certain lines I think that you shouldn't cross. And I think that he created gray area where he shouldn't, which has led to a lot of these problems. So that's where I would really criticize Joe Biden.
No, that's fair. And we should make a stipulation that we're talking about things that happened when he was vice president, not president, but your argument still applies. But also, while you showed great human empathy there, which I appreciate, I just come back to your final point, which is, dude, you're president. Your son is screwing up your foreign policy. Make him stop. You don't need to know the details. You don't need to know the details of what's going. I don't care whether you've spoken to him about the details of Burisma. Him being on that board is screwing you up, even if he did nothing but sit on that board. Get rid of it. Like, stop him. It's but anyway, we'll get to the details. China. There's two parts to China. The first part was from December 2013. Joe Biden takes Hunter Biden on Air Force 2 to China while Biden's doing official work. Hunter goes on some business meetings. The 4th of December 2013, Joe Biden meets Jonathan Lee, who is a business partner of Hunter's, for a handshake on a business trip. A few weeks later, Rosemont Seneca signs a deal with the state-owned Bank of China to create BHR, with Jonathan Lee as the CEO. In October 2019, a spokesperson for Hunter Biden stated Hunter neither played a role in the formation or licensure of BHR, nor owned any equity in it while his father was vice president. He served only as a member of its board of directors, which he joined based on his interest in seeking ways to bring Chinese capital to international markets. It was an unpaid position, they say. I find that very hard to believe. But let's move on. September 12th, 2014, BHR invested $1.7 billion in a Chinese Communist Party linked petroleum and chemical company. Roughly 3 months later, Hunter Biden and his associates invest $484,000 into BHR. That's presumably Devon Archer. A few weeks later, Rakashev, his Kazakhstani oil company, and Burisma join with CCP linked company and announce a transnational financial arrangement. They like to get all their companies together, Hunter and Archer. September 1st, 2015, BHR joins with a CCP-linked entity to acquire US-based Henniges Automotive in a deal reportedly worth $600 million. January 2017, BHR agreed to purchase Lundin Mining Corp's minority stake in African cobalt copper mine Tenke Fungurume Mining SA for $1.14 billion. So there's a lot of big investments going on with BHR, okay? 18th of February 2017, Schwerin, he's the bookkeeper, sends a recommendation that Joe Biden wrote for Jonathan Lee's son to get into Brown Uni. So Joe Biden wrote a recommendation that Jonathan Lee, the CEO of BHR's son, should get into uni, to Brown Uni, an Ivy League uni. He did not get in. It did not work. April 2017, Joe Biden writes a recommendation for Jonathan Lee's daughter to get into Georgetown. She does not get in. July 2019, Hunter receives a $10,000 wire from Wang Xin, who worked with BHR. August 2019, Hunter receives a $250,000 wire from Jonathan Lee. October 19, in 2019, Hunter announces he's getting out from BHR. His spokesperson said, quote, "To date, Hunter has not received any compensation for being on BHR's board of directors. He has not received any return on his investment. There have been no distributions to BHR shareholders since Hunter obtained his equity interest. Moreover, Hunter played no role in directing or making BHR's investments. Hunter intends to resign from the BHR board of directors on or by October 31st, 2019. I also find that hard to believe as well, given he'd just been wired $250,000 from Jonathan Lee. So I'm not sure I believe the spin from Hunter's spokespeople about what he did on BHR. I don't know what he did on BHR. There's no information out there. But he did something. And apparently unpaid. But that's the first part. The second part...
I remember correctly that Tucker Carlson once got Hunter Biden to write letters to get his kids into college.
I don't know. That sounds delicious. But you wouldn't be saying it if it wasn't true. I'm sure you're right.
I'm just fact-checking myself. Keep going.
That's great. Okay, well, while you're fact-checking yourself, I'm going to be starting the second part of China, which is the CEFC stuff. Late in 2015, Vuk Jeremic, a former foreign minister of Serbia and president of the United Nations General Assembly, appears to have helped Biden family members connect with CEFC leaders. CFC is a large Chinese company associated with the CCP. in Rob Walker's interview, he says in 2015, Hunter business associates, Rob Walker, James Gillier, and Hunter himself, met with Zhang, who was CEFC's number 2 or 3 person, for a dinner in Monaco. Between 2015 and 2017, Rob Walker says that he, Hunter, and Gillier made some introductions on behalf of CEFC. One was with an Omani bank, an Omani energy company, and another was with a Colombian energy company. He says they had good rapport with CEFC and discussed pursuing infrastructure projects in the US. CEFC was interested in rail projects that US companies would not have found profitable. Walker said they likely needed a US partner, such as them, to provide opportunities for CEFC. They then received a $3 million amount in the beginning of 2017 that Walker said was a thank you from CEFC for the work they had done up to that point in time. That was in March the 1st, 2017, that they received a $3 million wire to Rob Walker's company. Next day, Walker wired $1 million to $1.065 million to a company associated with James Gillier, who was another one of the Biden family associates. And then after that, the Biden family in general received $1.065 million in payments over a 3-month period in different bank accounts. James Biden got $360,000 out of that $1 million, and Hunter got pretty much the rest. So between 2015 and 2017 in total, Hunter Biden, James Biden, Haley Biden, and an unknown Biden and their companies collectively received $1.3 million in payments in total from Walker, but it was almost all in March the 1st, 2017. Then on the 13th of February, 2017, there was a Miami meeting between Hunter, Walker, Gillier, and Yi Jianmin, the boss of CEFC. Ye supposedly gave Hunter a diamond. Walker never saw that diamond. Hunter's ex-wife says that the diamond was worth $80,000. She said that during her divorce. She wanted a piece of it. James Biden said he remembered it being handed over and that Hunter was originally told the diamond was actually worth $10,000, but James took it to a friend of his and found out it was worthless, he said. It was from Zamels or something, I don't know. Then May 2017, Hunter tried to set up a company to do a deal with the CFC, that company I'd been talking about before, called Sinohawk. It involved Walker, Gillier, Hunter, and a new player, Tony Bobulinski, who we're going to talk a lot about. The big guy email was part of that. The 10 for the big guy was part of those processes, those negotiations. The deal fell through, though. Hunter cut Bobulinski out. And in fact, he cut out everyone. Hunter was negotiating at the end of July his own family venture with CEFC. Executive Zhao Ranlong wrote that the company fully supported the framework of establishing the joint venture based on their trust on the Biden family. Zhao added that $5 million is lent to Biden family in the $10 million charter capital. This $5 million loan to Biden family is interest-free, but if the $5 million is used up, should CEFC keep lending more to the family? If CEFC lends more, they need to know the interest rate for the subsequent loans, he said. July 30th, 2017 is when Hunter sent that famous alleged text to CEFC employee Raymond Zhao. And I'll put this up right now for you all to see. Zed, please have the director call me, not James or Tony or Jim. Have him call me tonight. I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. I'm very concerned that the chairman has either changed his mind and broken our deal without telling me, or that he is unaware of the promises and assurances that have been made have not been kept. Tell the director I would like to resolve this now before it gets out of hand, and now means tonight. And Zed, if I get a call or text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows, and my ability to forever hold a grudge, that you will regret not following my direction. All too often, people mistake kindness for weakness, and all too often I am standing over top of them saying I warned you. From this moment until when he reaches me, it's 9:45 a.m. here, and I assume 9:45 p.m. there. So his night is running out. And now the reason I read you all that whole message from beginning to end was because I'm going to take a little aside now to just say those WhatsApp messages that we're quoting, and there's a number of them, there's going to be more of them, they're from the IRS whistleblower, Gary Shapley. He admits that these alleged WhatsApp messages are not WhatsApp messages. They are a summary list compiled by one of a few people working at the IRS. His testimony, question, and these aren't, this is his house testimony, question, and these aren't WhatsApp messages? These are summaries of WhatsApp messages, correct? Answer, yeah, that's correct, because it was something about the readability of the actual piece, right? It was easier to summarize in a spreadsheet. Question, okay, and who did the summary? Who prepared this document? Answer, it was either the computer analysis guy or redacted, one or the other. Why does this matter? Surely the IRS wouldn't lie about these WhatsApp messages. No, they wouldn't lie on purpose, I'm sure. But Hunter lawyer Abu Lal, and we'll be meeting him again, said that they screwed up when they did the transcription. He says, quote, Mr. Biden is alleged to have been sitting next to his father on July 30th, 2017, when he allegedly sent a WhatsApp message urging the completion of some business transaction. The inference is that the reference message was being sent to an official of CEFC to forward a false narrative about the Biden's involvement in that company. The facts, which some media have now reported, are that President Biden and our client were not together that day. That's Hunter. President Biden and Hunter were not together that day. The company being referenced was not CEFC, but Harvest Financial Group, with a person who also had the initial Z, and no transaction actually occurred. Here's the problem. We can't tell who's telling the truth because we don't have the original WhatsApp messages. We just have this summary. So we don't know how much they've been altered for readability and understandability. It's possible they were trying to do their best to make them easy to understand and they screwed up in the process. That's possible. We can't know. But I don't believe him in this case. And I'll tell you why I don't believe him. The next day, I'll put up some more messages. This is what happened the next day. The person who these guys called Zhao in the last message sends Kevin Dong's foreign phone number on the next day. And then Hunter texts to Z again, presumably the same number because they said it's the same person. I reached out to K, presumably Kevin, and he declined my call and has not returned my text. I assume he knows our plan to speak is highly confidential. I just hope he isn't talking to Tony or Jay. If he is, we have a real problem. If I can reshape this partnership to what the chairman intended, then James and Rob will be well taken care of. But I will not have Tony dictating to me nor the director what we can and cannot do. Zhao responds, says the summary. I don't think he is talking to Tony or the other guys, mostly with the director. I just sent an email to you and CC to Kevin. He has your phone number now. Hi, Hunter. Did you see the email from Kevin? The director would like to suggest you and Kevin have a meeting. CFC is willing to cooperate with the family. He thinks now the priority is to solve the problem mentioned last night. Okay, so that message obviously matches the message from the day before about not calling Tony or Jay, James Gilliam. And this also matches perfectly what happened days later with people who we know, not from WhatsApp messages, from actions in the real world, which is on the 3rd of August, 2017, 3 days later, Hunter starts a new company, Hudson West III, a joint venture between Hunter Biden, Owasco PC, the company we said was his private law company, and CEFC's Gong Wen Dong, otherwise known as Kevin. So it seems in those two messages, Hunter was trying to put the finishing touches on the deal with Kevin from CEFC. And he didn't want James or Tony to get involved because it was just him. He said, we'd be okay. James and Rob Walker will be okay. Screw Bobulinski. We'll find out why he said screw Bobulinski soon. But that's what I think. That's my personal opinion is you can look for yourself. I put those messages up so you can decide for yourself. My view is I don't believe Abe Lau for the reason I just said. But we can't be 100% sure. We just can't. So we need to watch out for all the WhatsApp messages from this period. There's always a chance they might be wrong. So I just want to flag that. Back onto the timeline. 3rd of August 2017, Hunter Biden tells Gong Win Dong in an alleged WhatsApp exchange when quibbling over whether Kevin will give him $5 million or $10 million per year. Please, let's put this to bed tonight, sign officially tomorrow or any time as late tonight as you want and get to work. I'm tired of this, Kevin. I can make $5 million in salary at any law firm in America. If you think this is about money, it's not. The Bidens are the best I know at doing exactly what the chairman wants from this partnership. Please, let's not quibble over peanuts. The reason I put that in there is because I'm not sure if you can get $5 million in salary from any law firm in America. I have my doubts about that, but I will say this. He's right. That is not much money. Like, I keep on coming back to this over and over again with all this alleged massive corruption. It's just not much money. And we're going to see more examples of this soon. On the 8th of August, CEFC Connected Business wired $5 million to Hudson West III. That same day, Hunter Biden transferred $400,000 out of the Hudson West third account and into his corporation at Wasco PC. From those funds, Hunter purchased a Porsche. Never enough sports cars for Hunter. And he transferred funds to other personal and business accounts. On the 14th of August, he wired $150,000 from his Wasco account to the Lion Hall Group. That is James Biden's account. So that's to Joe Biden's brother, James Biden. And between 14th of August 2017 and August the 3rd, 2018, Owasco sent 20 wires totaling $1.4 million to the Lion Hall Group. So out of that $5 million, James Biden got a third of it. Okay, then there is another brief little side, an alternative story from Gal Luft. Who's Gal Luft, you might say? Gal Luft is a character who we're not going to make too much because no one wants to talk about Gal Luft anymore. He was a potential whistleblower for Republicans earlier this year. I'll talk about him in a second. He says what that sitting with my father WhatsApp message was about something completely different. He says it was about the CEFC deciding Hunter was useless to them now that Biden was no longer VP. And so they were going to cut him off. And that night, CFC executive Patrick Ho, who was staying in a hotel in Manhattan at the time, received a tip-off to leave America immediately, according to Luft. And it turned out there were secret New York indictments in the offing, and they missed Patrick Ho because of the tip-off, and he got out in time. He says that Hunter had a mole responsible inside the New York Police Department who gave him the tip-off, and sorry, not the police department, the SDNY, that's the Attorney General's office. And he had, since Hunter had a mole and he saved Patrick Ho, he demonstrated his value, Gal Luft says. And that's why they then got into business, because Hunter demonstrated his value, then they wired him the money and they carried on. Luft says that Patrick Ho told him all this, the guy who escaped. Sounds like massive bullshit to me, this story, but I'm passing it on. It doesn't make sense with anything else we know. It doesn't match anything else. And also Gal Luft seems to be full of shit generally. But I'm just putting it there in case you have a different view than I do about Gal Luft. You can make sense of that if you wish. That's his story. The way this finishes off, regardless of who you believe, on November 2017, Patrick Ho was arrested and charged with trying to bribe the government officials in Chad and Uganda. In early 2018, the tycoon behind CEFC, Ye Jianming, the guy who gave the diamond to Hunter, was detained in China under corruption suspicions. He's never been seen publicly since. That was the end of CEFC. That's why the money stopped. The problem with a lot of this China stuff is that, especially the CEFC stuff, is that most of it occurred when Joe Biden wasn't a politician or even a candidate. It was in 2017 and 2018, most of the time, most of the stuff, which leads to issues like this for Jason Smith from the Ways and Means Committee.
Can you explain the timing then of the August 6th WhatsApp message? Why is that evidence of some wrongdoing?
I'm not an expert on the timeline. I would love to have President Biden and his family to tell us about all the timelines, because it's really, really unfortunate that we see so many meetings and so many phone calls that involved around official activity that the vice president has been participating in, and then big sums of money follows later.
But if he's not the
through-
president or the vice president at that time, where's the wrongdoing? He wasn't even a candidate for president at that time.
He was a candidate.
In August 6th of 2017,
Apparently, what source are you with?
I'm with NBC.
So apparently you'll never believe us.
I'm not saying I don't believe you.
but
I'm asking you a very direct question. You presented a piece of evidence that you say came on August 6, 2017, that demonstrates that Joe Biden was using political influence to help his son. If he
Which-
wasn't a political figure at that time, the first WhatsApp message you put up, where you talk about the brand, and I'm completely open-minded about this. I'm asking you specifically, how does that demonstrate that there's some sort of political influence being put over him if at that time he is not he's not an elected official?
I'm definitely not going to pinpoint one item. I think we've outlined.
You presented it. It was your
numerous-
first thing that you brought up.
So apparently you don't agree with it. So
It's not that I don't
report
agree
you
with it. I'm
disagree
asking you to explain it.
I'll take the next question.
Poor old Jason Smith. He just couldn't quite wrap his head around this problem for them that so much of the period with the China stuff, Joe Biden can do what he likes. He's a private individual. I'm sorry. And before I get your verdict on the China stuff so far, before we go into more detail, I need to know the results of your fact check.
Yes, I have checked myself, and yes, Tucker Carlson and his wife asked Hunter Biden in 2014 for help to get their son Buckley Carlson into Georgetown. What is it with Georgetown? Tucker's wife Susie reportedly wrote an email to Hunter, "Tucker and I have the greatest respect and admiration for you, always." And then said,
Not always.
yeah. And Tucker Carlson wrote after he provided it, "I can't thank you enough for writing that letter to Georgetown on Bucky's behalf. So nice of you. I know it'll help. Hope you're great and we can get dinner soon." And a little note from the article, Buckley Carlson went to the University of Virginia. So it obviously didn't help.
And this happens over and over again in this story, that what Hunter Biden tries to do never works. And it's actually to his advantage.
Don't ask a Biden to get you into Georgetown. That's the big lesson from today.
Yes, it's the takeaway. It's funny, Tucker Carlson has a number of times said that Hunter Biden is a lovely guy. I haven't once heard him talk about that, though. That's interesting.
Fun fact.
Yeah, it is a fun fact. There's also, coincidentally, as you say, in 2014, when Hunter Biden was the son of the vice president. Influence.
It is.
Anyway, what's your verdict on the China stuff so far? Either part. Is there anything that you want to comment on at this point in time, or are we holding it?
Yeah, well, obviously the stuff that happened when Joe Biden wasn't in office, like that's a pretty big asterisk on the relevance of it politically. And then, yeah, if we're going to get more into Bobulinski, obviously the most troubling thing in all of that is this text of, alluding to sitting next to the big guy and, that he's going to use him to punish his associates. But, again, even if we take that message as a correct, as it's paraphrased, even if we take it as a correct reflection of the message and the context, it doesn't sound good, but it also is very easy to believe. It's certainly good evidence to me of Hunter throwing his dad's name around and trying to create this sense of connectedness politically, and this sense that, they are working in lockstep. But it's also very easy to believe he was just bullshitting, that he was totally making it up, big noting himself. And so again, it doesn't mean a lot to me unless it can't, it's worth asking questions about it, because he's certainly suggesting Joe Biden is tied up in the business affairs. But in the absence of more evidence that points to the fact that he was more directly involved or benefiting financially, I am not inclined to put a lot of weight on it. I do think it's funny that Republicans, could not think less of Hunter's credibility and character in general, except that anytime he says anything or has been recorded as saying anything incriminating, then his word is gold.
Yes.
And we have to take it as absolute evidence that what he said was the literal truth, and he was sitting with Joe on the couch, and Joe's like, write this.
That's a great point. And it's also, as you've indicated, mid-2017 is right in the addict zone. So if ever there was a time that you would not believe him, that is the time.
Yeah, by all accounts, he was truly very off the wagon and very in a bad place after Bo died. And, that's getting in that zone.
Yeah, look, for my part on this, I reckon the BHR stuff from 2016, where we don't know what they did, and we don't know what money Hunter got. We don't really know the situation at all, and it was while Joe was vice president. That to me is definitely potentially dodgy for Hunter. I see no evidence to be dodgy for Joe, but I mean, there's just no evidence. There's just zero. So maybe, but we just don't know. The CEFC stuff, that's all so far. That's all just when Joe's a private citizen. So, I agree with you. So far, it's just BHR for me. I call it potentially dodgy. One more thing on Hunter before we go to Joe. FARA violations. FARA violations of the Foreign Agents Registration Act. It requires the Foreign Agents Registration Act requires people lobbying on behalf of foreign governments to make certain disclosures to the Justice Department. They didn't used to enforce this at all before 2017. Then 2017, Mueller used it to go after Paul Manafort. And then Republicans went, oh yeah, here we go. If you can do it to us, we can do it to you. And so it's kind of opened the door a bit to maybe Hunter being charged with FARA violations. He's been investigated a lot for potential FARA violations over the last few years. They're certainly onto it as a potential. He did take money to potentially lobby Americans for Ukraine and China. Admittedly, on Ukraine, it was Blue Star Strategies that did most of the actual lobbying. But I did highlight that Amos Hochstein entry in the timeline before for this reason. Remember, Amos Hochstein was a special envoy and coordinator for international affairs in the Obama administration who met with Hunter Biden and discussed Burisma. 5 days later, he met Vice President Biden in the West Wing. The day after, he calls Hunter again. Is that lobbying? We don't know what they said. Maybe. We don't know. Maybe there are other instances we don't know as well. I have no idea what Hunter did with his CEFC money. I have no idea what he did. So it's potentially an issue here. For me, potentially dodgy for Hunter, potentially illegal for Hunter, FARA violations. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely potentially. And these are the kind of things where you used to think that like they're actual legitimate avenues for investigation. Again, all the attempts to connect everything to Joe Biden without a lot of evidence, I'm more skeptical on, but I think there's pretty good evidence that Hunter's acted in inappropriate ways. And, God, the light's gone out again. Yeah, it just seems like a worthwhile avenue of investigation for the people who look into these things. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, let's roll along. The first big question for Joe Biden, did Joe Biden deliberately help Hunter with his business? I've got a few sections to this. Did Joe Biden do anything at all? Because according to Claire McCaskill,
they are going to try to indict a father for loving his son who has been addicted to drugs and or alcohol, and without evidence of the father doing anything other than loving that son.
Poor Joe, so much heart, so much love. Yeah. Let's just put that to one side. The first claim that's been made is, as vice president, Joe Biden brought Hunter Biden along to at least 15 countries where Hunter Biden sold the brand to enrich his family, i.e. him. And the truth of that claim is that it was apparently common for Joe to take all family members with him. And Hunter was a family member. So I don't see a big deal. Whether if he got off the plane and went to do a business trip, if he's taking his other grandchildren as well, who cares what they're doing? If they're going into a pool or they're going on a business trip. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is a thing that he does still all the time, is bring different family members on different trips. And that key China meeting that you referenced earlier was one where initially Joe was just taking one of the grandkids, and Hunter at the last minute was like, can I come too? And then, kind of arrange that handshake and the deal. And I mean, you can see, like, again, this is an example where, Joe's allowed to take family members on these trips, and you can see Hunter opportunistically leveraging them for business ends, and that's the dodginess.
Yeah.
And you can say Joe should have been wiser to that and putting clearer guardrails around that activity about what was and wasn't appropriate, but it doesn't then reach the level for me of Joe engaging in corrupt behavior.
Yeah, I agree with that. And honestly, I don't even care. This is one of those ones where I don't even care that Hunter did that. Like, if I'm Joe, I'm not stopping him, to be honest. As long as the activity that he's undertaking is not corrupt activity, that's going to reflect poorly in my administration. If he wants to go and do business deals, whatever. Like I said, he can do whatever he likes. As long as if he's there keeping me company on my trip as my son, I don't care what he does in his time off from visiting with me. Yeah. Anyway, whatever. Different people can disagree on that. Next question is, what did Joe Biden know about Hunter's business? We've heard a lot about this. Many Biden denials. The most sweeping one was this one from August 2019. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or with anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period. That's what he said in August 2019. And he said similar-ish things a number of times. Devon Archer just says, no, bullshit. I'm part of the business, and he certainly had knowledge of me. This is what he had to say to Tucker Carlson.
The reaction to what you've said in public, to what you said to the committee on the Hill, and doubtless to what you've been telling us in this interview, is that, like, there's no corruption here at all. This is totally normal. Joe Biden had no role whatsoever in his son's business or knowledge of it. But
right.
That seems false.
Yeah, I think that's categorically false. I think that he was aware of Hunter's business. He met with Hunter's business partners. You found a letter that illustrates that he knew me.
And he's thanking you. He's thanking you for his efforts.
So I think that was, I think
your efforts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's not factually right. But in the same breath, I don't think Joe Biden's looked at a balance sheet or a cap table or what have you, or any financial document, probably ever.
And then another thing about Joe Biden's knowledge of Hunter Biden's business was famously in the October debate in 2020, he was asked about Hunter's China businesses, and Joe Biden said this.
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had, the only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
Note well, these days, Joe Biden's spokesperson or spokespeople, they don't say Biden never talked to his son about his overseas business dealings like they used to say back in 2019 and 2020. Now they say he wasn't involved in his son's business dealings, which is an important distinction. So do you have any thoughts on this before we go through a million examples of Joe Biden and his son's business dealings, Melina?
I'll wait till after.
Okay, all right. I would say even right now, just from Devon Archer's quote alone, I would say that Joe Biden was being tricky at best by what he means by discussing business. Like, he might not have ever pulled out a spreadsheet. No one's suggesting he did, but his knowledge of vaguely what was going on, I find difficult to believe he didn't have that. But anyway,
it does get back to that don't ask, don't tell policy that, by all accounts was in place, but it's certainly false to suggest he had no awareness. And, the trickier language that followed probably seems like a more accurate description of the scenario.
Now let's get into the detailed, specific examples I keep promising. The suggestions of Joe Biden's involvement in Hunter Biden's business. This is the brass tacks now. As we go on, it's going to get meatier and meatier. First of all, let's deal with the CEFC Bobulinski stuff. I promised we'd come back to Bobulinski. This is from This is involving 2017, right? So this is when Joe Biden is a citizen. Now, on the 13th of February, 2017, according to Bobulinski, there was a meeting in Miami. I'm going to put up this interview with Bobulinski right now so you can read it as well. This is important. The work conducted by CEFC, Gilead, Walker, Hunter Biden, James Biden, and Ye over the preceding 2 years was discussed in detail at the Miami meeting. In particular, CEFC was closing significant investment deals in Poland, Kazakhstan, Romania, Oman, and the Middle East during this period of time. That's during the 2 years before 2017. CEFC had used its relationship with Hunter Biden and James Biden and the influence attached to the Biden name to advance CEFC's interests abroad. Hunter Biden and James Biden did not receive any monetary compensation for their assistance in these projects. Hunter Biden and James Biden did not receive any compensation because Joseph Biden was still vice president during this time period. There was a concern that it would be improper for payments to be made to Hunter Biden and James Biden by CEFC due to its close affiliation with the Chinese government. At this point in time, I remind you, we know that there was a thank you payment in March 2017 that Rob Walker told us about from the CEFC. So that this part so far rings true, that they weren't getting paid until 2017 because they thought it was unseemly, and so they were reserving their payment until later, until after Biden was vice president. Let's get on to more of what Bobulinski has to say. An arrangement to provide compensation to Hunter Biden and James Biden in the form of payments and future investment opportunities was discussed at the Miami meeting. Specifically, a new joint venture entity would be formed that would be owned in equal portions by CEFC and companies owned by members of the Biden family. Collectively, Hunter Biden, James Biden, Joseph Biden, Gilead, and Walker would own 50% of the JV. The new company would be capitalized by a $10 million investment. CEFC would directly contribute $5 million to the new company. In addition, a $5 million loan would be provided to the members of the Biden family. The $5 million provided in the form of a loan would then be contributed to the new company, bringing the total capitalization to $10 million, while each 50% owner of the new JV would technically contribute $5 million to the initial capitalization. In actuality, all $10 million originated with CEFC. Now, that is a big deal. The claim is that this attempted company they came up with at the Miami meeting was a complete payoff. The whole $10 million came from CEFC as a complete payoff for the work they did for CEFC while Biden was vice president. It was too unseemly to take money then, but now they're getting paid off, and it involves Joe Biden. Joe Biden himself is getting paid now for the work that was too unseemly to collect money from when he was vice president. If that is what happened, that sounds like corruption to me. At least has strong possibilities of corruption. And so that is a big deal, that claim from Tony Bobulinski. But let's talk about the truth here. Abby Lau, who is the lawyer for Hunter Biden, remember I said I didn't believe him with one of his other claims. This time I believe him because he's brought some receipts. Alleged receipts. Mr. Bobulinski, this is a quote from Lau, did not attend a meeting with Mr. Biden and his associates in Miami in 2017, nor did he meet members of the Biden family then. Around February 13, 2017, Messrs. Biden, Walker, and Gilead traveled to Miami to meet with CEFC Chairman Ye, Director Zhang, and other CEFC members to discuss a possible business venture. It's here that Mr. Biden met Chairman Ye for the first time. He's talking about Hunter, not Joe, okay? And at that meeting, a tentative business agreement was reached in principle to set up a joint venture with CEFC, and our business structure was discussed. The evidence will be uncontradicted that Mr. Bobulinski was not at or even aware of the meeting in Miami between Mr. Biden and CEFC, where an initial joint venture was discussed and agreed to in principle. So he's saying that Bobulinski is making up what happened at this meeting. He wasn't there. He didn't even know about it. Abby Lau now delivers the proof. Alleged WhatsApp messages. I say alleged because we don't see the messages. We just see him quoting the messages, but I doubt he made them up. On February 19, 2017, Mr. Bobulinski messaged Mr. Gillia that he is, quote, in Miami. Mr. Gillia responded, quote, I left there Thursday. Mr. Bobulinski replies, quote, are you kidding? You should have told me where you are now. You should have told me. Where are you now? Mr. Gillia then proceeded to explain to Mr. Bobulinski that Mr. Gillia just wrapped up meetings with CFC partners and agreed in principle on a deal, writing, quote, was there with chairman of Chinese. We agreed a way forwards in US to create investment platform. I want to propose to my partners that we bring you in. You up for it? I know you were the right guy for the job, but busy. Mr. Bobulinski replied, thanks. The following day on February 20, Mr. Bobulinski messaged Mr. Gillia, who's your partner? And Mr. Gillia responds, Hunter Biden. Now, Walker, in his testimony, Rob Walker, also said he met Bobulinski in May 2017 as well. So he wouldn't have met him at this point in time. Note, we haven't seen those WhatsApp messages. They're only alleged at this stage. But then there's more evidence. I regret to interrupt this odyssey that you are currently on to tell you what you probably already know. And that is you cannot export a 6-hour podcast at the ABC. The mainframe can't handle it. It's just sputters and wheezes and fails. Turns out you can't even export 2 3-hour podcasts at the ABC. That didn't work either. So now we're getting very late at night and I'm now splitting up into 3. I really hope I'm not about to in an hour's time record a video for splitting into 4. Fingers crossed. You know the answer. I hope it's good news. Anyway, please head over to part 2 of PEP 138 to find the gripping conclusion of why Bobulinski is a bit dodgy. It's a real thriller. See you over there. Stay peppy.